Hi, I'm Mike Overly, author of the Guitar Encyclopedia. This is the Guitar Forum. Welcome back. Tonight we're going to talk about finger picking. As you can see, this evening I have my acoustic guitar, and we are now going to discuss how we play acoustic guitar, not necessarily with the pick, although we are going to do one particular style of finger picking that we call Pic and Finger style. But the majority of the time this evening we're going to discuss what we do when we use our fingers to actually pluck the strings and produce the sound. The left-hand function of the guitar basically remains the same. You're going to play the same chords and the same scales and arpeggios like we've covered in other editions of the Guitar Forum. But tonight we're going to concentrate on the right hand and what we can do to create many different sounds on the guitar using your right hand fingers. Now, the first thing that we want to consider when you do play your fingers is that you have fingernails on your right hand, and these fingernails are going to function just like your pick does when you use your pick. And the first thing that we'll notice about the length of the nail itself. Now, this is an important aspect. If your nails are too short, then of course all you're going to get is a fleshy kind of tonality, and you won't have any definition of the actual plucking of a string with your nail. So therefore, if you don't have enough nail, then you just get this soft, fleshy little sound. And also then, if you have your nails too long, what happens is they get hung up in the strings. They're too long, and when you actually go to play, they get caught in your strings. So the optimum length of your fingernails are that if you just hold your fingernails up to your and look over the tops of your flesh of your fingers, then if you just barely see your fingernail touching right above your flesh, that's the length that you're looking for. So just a little bit of nail above the flesh and on your thumb also is the proper length. Nails tend to grow very fast, so you always got to, if you're going to play in a finger picking style, you got to keep on top of your nails because they tend to grow quite rapidly. The next thing that is important about the nail itself, just like there are different shapes of picks, like triangle picks or rounded picks, you want to have the shape of your nail. That becomes very important also. On the right-hand side of your nail itself, it tends to be just a little bit longer than on the other side because that is the angle that you end up striking your string with. You also then, using a diamond file and 600 grit sandpaper, you use the diamond file to shape the nail in a nice round and smooth so that it glides over the string, and then you use 600 grit sandpaper to actually finish off your nail, and it creates a real satin smooth finish. And in fact, with my pick that I use, with my pick, I use 600 grit sandpaper, and I rub my pick on 600 grit, and it creates this super, super slick, smooth finish on my pick that doesn't get any of those little burrs and notches and niches that get in there that tend to hang up and make your pick sound real grindy. My pick is super smooth and just glides over the strings because of finishing it off with 600 grit sandpaper. Now, talking about all that, when I first heard about shaping your nails in sandpaper, and I thought that was like, that's going pretty far. But in fact, it really isn't. It enables you to produce a tone that is very solid and yet very round and smooth. The next thing now, after you've shaped your nails and got the proper length and all that sort of thing, is that the right hand uses Spanish names to designate the fingers that you play. Now now this all comes out of fingerstyle play of Spanish guitar and classical guitar, sarega, tarrega and sor, and early players of classical guitar, and Segovia of course. And classical guitar uses your fingers to play. So fingerstyle guitar is coming from a Spanish style guitar. And when I was taking classical instruction at college, my instructor taught me about shaping the nails in the 600 grit paper, and it actually made a big, big difference. So give that a try. Now what we're saying is that we want to designate which one of the fingers of the right hand we want to play with. They have Spanish names, but we're just going to use our regular terms that we use in regular American fingerstyle guitar, and that is we have our thumb, so we call T for thumb. Now the thumb, of course, could play any string of all 6 strings. But it tends to play, most of the times, as we'll see, on the lower bass strings, the 6, the 5, and the 4, creating these lower bass sounds with the thumb. Then we use our index, I, and the middle finger, M, and our ring finger in Spanish is A. So we have this T, I, M, A designation. Almost the majority of the time, 99% of the time, you do not use the little finger in fingerstyle guitar. Now, it is possible to use that, and sometimes I do when I want to create like a 5-string chord. Now, of course, we have 5 fingers. We can't play all 6 strings at the same time. The maximum number we can play are 5 strings. So if I do want to have, for example, if I take an E major chord, let's say, and I want to now play the 6th string with my thumb, I can now put I on the 4th string, M on the 3rd string, A on the 2nd string, and now I can actually use my little finger on the 1st string, and I can actually have a 5-note, in this case an arpeggio, or if I play them all at once, a chord. But the majority of the time you don't use your 4th finger, you use the thumb, index, middle, and A, T, I, M, A, and the majority of times that's the number of fingers that you'll use in a finger style. Now, the placement of the fingers on the strings is also essential. The idea is you're trying to create this relaxed hand position that enables you to roll your fingers without getting hung up or stiff or any of the muscles that glide over, like we talked earlier about tendinitis and all those problems that you get when your muscles actually go over your wrist. If you keep your hand in a nice rounded position like this, the muscles glide easily over your wrist bone. As you put your fingers on the string, you'll notice that the fingers are on a diagonal. And so the I finger is a little ahead of the M and a little ahead of the A. So we have this diagonal shape. And then it becomes important to keep your thumb in front of the fingers, so that, for example, if you were going to put your thumb and fingers on the same line, when you actually come down to play, by the time you're on the 4th string with your thumb, you start crashing into your other fingers and you actually can't even play it. So what you do is you twist your hands more, get the thumb out front, and now you can very easily then play the 4th string and without touching any of your other fingers. So the placement of your fingers on the strings themselves is very important. The main thing to remember is keep your thumb in front of your fingers. In other words, the thumb is going closer to the fretboard, whereas the fingers are moving back towards the bridge. And this gives you a little bit of a split, and then you can very easily stay clear of all your strings. With that said, now, one of the most important parts now about fingerstyle is that using your fingers is the really only time, by definition, that you can play a chord. Remember that a chord says that you're going to play 3 or more different tones or letters at the same time. Now, when you use a pick, and we say that we're going to use a regular pick and we're going to play a chord, when we play, I'm playing a C chord now, when I play a chord with my pick, it kind of sounds like it's all happening at one time, but as we can see, it's just a very rapid rest stroke through the strings. But they're not all happening at the same time, and therefore, really, by definition, when you play with your pick, you can't play a chord truly, because you are playing those strings individually at separate times, even though you are playing it very fast. But when you now put your fingers on the strings, keeping the thumb in front of the fingers, and I take that C chord, it is now possible to play those strings at exactly the same time. And I can play even all 5 strings when I use my little finger of the right hand. And I'm plucking all my strings at exactly the same time, and that by definition is truly a chord. Now, in relation to that concept of how do you actually, what some people call pinch all those strings at the same time, the concept is this: how not to make them all just roll off in an arpeggiated way rapidly, but to actually play all the strings at exactly the same time. The way this occurs is you put your fingers on the strings. Now, just like you would play a bow and arrow, you would have the bow and arrow and you would actually pull the string backward and then you would just let go of the string and it moves. This same principle is what you're now using on your guitar to play fingerstyle guitar. Now, what is happening is you're taking each of your strings, in this case I have 4 strings, T, I on the 3rd string, M on the 2nd string, and A on the 1st string. Now I create a little bit, as you can see my strings are moving as I pinch on them. I create a little bit of tension on the strings, and then to make them all sound at exactly the same time, I lift straight up off the guitar. So the idea is put your fingers and thumb on the strings, squeeze them a little bit, and then lift straight up. And then the strings actually just pop off your fingernails and they all sound at exactly the same time. So if I took a C major chord, I grab the fingers, I squeeze a little bit on the strings, and then I pull off and they all pop off at the same time and I have a chord. Now, the idea that we talked about earlier is that the thumb we will find now as we get into patterns, that the thumb will play on different strings, the 6th, the 5th, and the 4th, and generally speaking, the fingers I, M, and A will remain on the 3rd and the 2nd and the 1st. However, this is just a generalization, and you'll notice that sometimes I'll move my fingers inside and end up playing on the 4th, the 3rd, and the 2nd. So, in fact, the IMA fingers will move around from the set of 3-2-1 strings to the 4-3-2 strings, and you'll notice that as I play. So either one of those is going to be fine, and it will be determined by what I want to play. So the fingers will move up and down on their string sets, and the thumb can also move. Now the rule of what is determining which strings the thumb plays is relative to the number of strings that you have in a chord. If I take an E major chord, a regular open E major chord, I find that in this chord I would play all 6 strings. Now using my thumb I would play 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that I play all 6 strings in an E major chord. Since my I, M, A fingers now are playing the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 1st, that now means that on the E major chord, my thumb can play the 6th string, the 5th string, and the 4th string. We'll start with this E major chord. My first pattern will be a very simple pattern that's going to play thumb on the 6th string, the I finger, index finger, will play the 3rd string, the middle finger will play the 2nd string, and the A finger is going to play the 1st string. So I have this thumb 6th, I 3rd, M 2nd, A 1st. Now if we put a counting rhythm on it, then I can have like an 8th note rhythm, 1 and 2 and. I can now go 1 and 2 and I can hit the 6th string again, 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, taking that same pattern, but now this time changing the thumb, knowing that I can play the 6th string, the 5th string, and the 4th string when I'm playing an E major chord, I can now play 6th string, then IMA, 5th string IMA, 4th string IMA, and now I'm just going to go back to the 5th string to complete this 4 measure cycle, 5th string, thumb, IMA. So 6, 5, 4, 5, and now I have this pattern. Now, if I change the chord and I take, for example, now let's take C. If I take a C major chord, in the C major chord, I do not play the 6th string in a C major chord. I just play the C note on the 5th string, and then I play 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the C major chord, you use 5 strings. That means now that the thumb is only going to have 2 strings that it plays on a C chord, the 5th string and the 4th string. Now the rest of the pattern remains the same of my I, M, A on the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string. So now with the C chord, 5th string, 4th string, 5, 4. So you can see that your fingers keep playing the same pattern, that IMA, but the number of strings that your thumb play changes according to the chord that you're playing. Now we'll take a D major chord. In the D major chord, we only play 4 strings, 4, 3, 2, and 1, the open D major chord. That means now, in fact, that the thumb only has its one note that it's going to play on the 4th string open. So thumb on the 4th string, and then your regular pattern of IMA, 4th string IMA. So what we've found now that the function of the thumb in fingerstyle guitar is very, very important because it has a lot of changing parts, let's say. Now, it is possible relative to what you do with your left hand to create different patterns with your thumb, even on the same chord. For example, in the C major chord that we spoke about earlier, we were playing 5 strings, so the thumb played the 5th and the 4th. So you'd have 5, 4, 5, 4. We can now move along and put other bass notes in this C chord by taking the C that's on the 5th string and moving the 3rd finger to the 6th string 3rd fret, which is a G note, and that way I get to play a note on the 6th string even though I'm still dealing with really a C chord. So I can have 5, 4, now I can play the note on the 6th string, so my thumb can now, even on a 5-string chord, really C, play 6 strings. I have my thumb on that 6th string. So 5, 4, 6, 4, 5. So relative to what you're doing with your left hand in the song that you're playing, you'll find that your fingers change. There isn't any set one thing that you do. It's an ever-changing situation relative to what you're playing in your particular song. Now, continuing on with this concept of patterns, patterns are a way, or is a way, to get your fingers to function. Once you learn various patterns, as we're going to go over a few, once you learn some patterns, really when you apply finger picking to a song, you don't want to just play one pattern through a whole song because it really becomes kind of boring, let's say. By changing the patterns within the song or playing your fingers the way you feel at the moment, then fingerstyle doesn't become this real rigid and set pattern thing, the way actually I've been playing right now to illustrate, but it becomes a very fluid and moving style of playing that is dictated by what do you want to hear. Let's continue on with patterns now, though. Let's take an E minor chord. I have an open E minor chord. This time now, instead of just playing a straight I-M-A pattern with my fingers, I'm going to play it backwards, and I'm just going to play A-M-I. So I'm just playing backwards. I'm just devising all the ways that you could create various combinations of your fingers. So thumb is playing 6th string, and now I'm playing A-M-I. 5th string, A-M-I. 4th string, A-M-I. So we have the opposite of the pattern that we played first. So T-A-M-I. Which is the opposite of T-I-M-A. Backwards, T-A-M-I. Now, there's every conceivable combination of your fingers that you can sit there and begin to think about. So the possibilities are virtually endless. Let's take a few more. Let's say we take a G chord now to change the sound. The G chord is once again a 6-string chord, so our thumb will be able to play on 6 and 5 and 4. And now let's take a little bit more complicated pattern. Let's take a pattern that goes thumb on any of the strings, 6, 5, or 4, and then thumb, I, M, and now let's go back to I, and then A, I, M, I. So all we're really doing is now creating patterns that alternate fingers. So I have this thumb, and now I'll go alternate between my I finger. I, M, I, A, I, M, I. Now I can play the 3 different strings with my thumb, 6, 5, and 4, and you create this pattern. Thumb, I, M, I, A, I, M, I, then the 5th string, 4th, 5. Now when you take let's take that pattern right there, and you get the principle. You can sit there and make up every conceivable combination of your fingers that you want to, so there's a lot. Let's deal with this one pattern that we just took, the alternating index pattern. This is pretty musical sound. Now when you apply that pattern to changing chords, then of course it takes on much more of a musical characteristic than just that you're studying how you move your right hand. So we'll take roughly a G chord, an A chord, a D chord, and a C chord. Now let's say G and A and C and D. We'll stick with that. So make up anything you want to do or any particular song you want. We're going to take a G chord, and then we're going to go to an A chord, to a C chord, and to a D chord. So we're going to take those 4 chords, and now we're going to apply this alternating picking pattern of thumb, the alternating I finger. Now we'll go to the A chord. Now A only has 2 strings that the thumb plays, the 5th and the 4th, because it's a 5-string chord. Once again, the C chord is a 5-string chord, so same pattern, 5 and 4, 5, 4. And then, as we said earlier, the D chord is only a 4-string chord, so the thumb just plays on the 4th string. Now when you put all that together in a moving way and perhaps speed it up a little bit, so you can hear that it creates a moving sound. It's kind of almost like a piano-like harpsichord kind of sound where you get those moving fingers in there. Also, you could play in the pinch style, to use that term, which means you're really playing chords, because many patterns could be created by combinations of individual fingers and fingers played together. Taking the G chord, we can now go thumb, I, and then play A and M together at the same time. Or you could take thumb and then play all 3 strings together. So there are many, many different sounds that you can create by playing chordally as you pinch things or playing individually. One of the interesting sounds that are created, of course, with fingerstyle, coming really from more of a classical type of orientation, is that you can play 2 notes at the same time and create like playing a little Bach piece. How you get to play strings across with not, if you were playing a pick, there's no way to play these 2 strings unless, of course, and this will be a good time then to introduce this concept, and this is what we call pick and finger play. Now, I can use my pick actually and play the 6th string and the 1st string at the same time, but it's because the pick is going to be held with my thumb and I finger, so that takes that finger out of the finger picking mode, and now I've got these 3 fingers left that I can use in a fingerstyle way. So I can use my pick and fingers, and therefore it would actually be possible to use my pick and my fingers and play 2 separate notes. So other styles of using pick and finger is to be able to get this rolling. Or to use pick and pinch things. Now, of course, what that does is that keeps the pick in your hand so that you could play a little finger style and then take off on your pick. So you can have your pick in your hand and still get some chordal sounds as well as being able to play notes that are separated by strings in the middle, whereas it becomes very difficult to do that when you use your pick because you would hit the other strings. So pick and fingers is actually a style. So it is possible to play strings apart using your pick, but you got to use your pick and your fingers. Now we'll go back to just pure fingerstyle, and it's possible then to play regular pieces that play separate parts, like this Bach piece. Other styles of using your fingers is for what we call, now tremolo to most people means what whammy bar means today, and that is tremolo really means, in a scientific term, the volume that increases and decreases in intensity. So actually a tremolo means to get louder and louder and softer in a wave like. Tremolo, as it's used in the term of fingerstyle guitar, though, means that you are going to play the same note but use a rapid rapid fingers in a sequential way. So like I am A, I am A, I am A. Now I could also use my thumb on that and have even four notes on the same, four individual strikes on the same pitch. T, A, M, I, T, A, M, I, T. But generally speaking, what you do with your thumb is you use the other strings to play. I'm taking another portion of a little classical piece that this is used in a lot, and you have this thumb on the fifth string, and now you go this A, M, I. Now you play your other strings. So you get that tremolo type sound. Now we can use other techniques where you do different patterns with your thumbs using your other chords, 6 1s and whatever, and create a pattern. Add your fingers. Kind of has a more country sound like Chet Atkins. Other things, pinch and pull hammers. Also, you noticed that in that I was using my fingers to brush off. Part of this brush off can be in a Spanish style, where you can do this rasgueado, create the Spanish sound. So that'll give you a few ideas about finger picking. I hope you enjoyed tonight's Guitar Forum. I'd like to close with just a little finger picking, dropping my E string down to D, and I wish you the best of all good things.